Nobody is saying that intimacy is not pleasure. Of course it is. It has to be. Pleasure is what creates a life, that creates the baby. It's not the stuff, the gashmizdika stuff that makes a baby. It's the tainug, the pleasure. But what is the pleasure? Are you having pleasure from something, or are you having pleasure from him? Is the pleasure about something, or is it about him? It is pleasure, but choose your pleasure. There's pleasure from food. There's pleasure from shopping. There's pleasure from children. There's pleasure from things. There's pleasure from your body and his body. And then there's pleasure of him. His body can be something besides him, or his body. See what I'm saying? It can be a body.
So there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of it.
Of course. But you want to get past it. You don't want it to be about a body. You want it to be about his body. And because it's his, that's why it's so pleasurable. But if he's not your pleasure, you're not connecting to him. The actual pleasure of just two bodies make you grow apart because it's not him. So yes, pleasure. The more you have of him, the more pleasure you get. Just from being with him. And in some way, that's a much greater pleasure. Look, you see, in the non-Jewish world, in the secular world, people have sex for a month, for 3 months, for a year, for 2 years, and then over. When you've had intimacy and you have to separate, it's torture. You feel like your neshama was ripped out. Like you were amputated. Which shows sex doesn't connect you. Thank you very much, it was fun. I'm going to do something else now. There's no bond. Intimacy bonds you. To lose him would be an amputation. And sometimes you have to amputate. Like when you have to get a get. But it feels like an amputation. Sex never feels like an amputation. You look at the magazines. 25 new secrets. How to improve. 25? I've read every book on the subject already, and the other magazine gave me 50 secrets. And now there are 25 more? Like there's no end to this? No, are you really getting the maximum? No, you got to try this and come on. Of course she's satisfied. The question is with what? With her husband or with her experience?
But by the man, it's the experience and not the wife.
How do you know? It's not true.
It sounds like.
If that were true, then why are men always looking for other women? They're always satisfied. Oh, they're not. A man is satisfied when he knows that he is a husband to his wife. If he's looking for some other satisfaction, he's not acting like a husband. He's just acting like a animal. It's the same thing. That's why you can't really compare. The husband has his frustrations, the wife has her frustrations, if you're focused on some kind of performance or achievement. If you really care about each other, you're never disappointed. You've had each other. There's nothing better. And that is, to do that, you have to undo all this mishigas that we've gotten into our heads. When it comes to pleasure, there really is no end. That's why junk food will never satisfy, because it's only for pleasure. Pleasure never ends. You can always have more pleasure. Just like you can always find a man more attractive than your husband. Better looking. And that's why you never get enough of junk food, because it's not even meant to satisfy a need. It's only meant to give pleasure. So when will you be satisfied?
When you eat too much and you have a stomachache. I mean, there's
You're not satisfied, you're sick. And then you can take a pill, by the way. They've invented a pill that can prevent your stomach from getting sick so that you can eat more of the junk food. A real need can be satisfied. Where there's no need, there can't be any satisfaction. Because what are you satisfying? So the real need is to bond with your husband. That is satisfying. How much pleasure? How much pleasure? There's no end.
I think when it's very goal oriented, you lose the pleasure in between. And so sometimes
You
there is a climax and sometimes there is not.
You lose the pleasure of him because you're thinking of the pleasure of climax.
Right.
So all of a sudden, he's not important. Well, that ruins everything. But it's the same for him. It's the same for him. If you're not his pleasure, then nothing is right. No matter how much he enjoys it, it's not right. He's not enjoying you. There is no more satisfying pleasure. There are greater pleasures. True. It is possible to have more pleasure with another man than your husband. That's why men commit adultery, because the other woman gives them more pleasure. But it's a different kind of pleasure. And to that pleasure, there's no end. The pleasure of being a husband to your wife and of being a wife to your husband, that's a real pleasure, and that brings real satisfaction to life, not just to a moment. So it depends on which pleasure are you reaching for. And they do compete with each other. It's like if you eat junk food, then you don't enjoy regular food anymore. Because it's not as dramatic. So we really are infected with this thinking, because nobody ever had this conversation before they read all the magazines and heard all the advice columns and so on. If we got the right information first, it would be so much easier. So should you talk to your 6 and 8-year-old daughters? Yeah. Talk to them. Do them a big favor. So going back to your question, you have to have maximum pleasure from him, not from it. Because when you have that pleasure, your life is content. You are a content human being. Of course, you don't have the thrill of climbing Mount Everest. You know what a high you get from climbing Mount Everest? I don't know either, and I'm not interested. But I'm sure it's exhilarating. Nothing like it in the world. Fine, you climb them. I'm not interested. And by the way, you really want to have a maximum dramatic, exciting, explosive sexual experience? Try drugs. I am serious. There's nothing like it. And then when you're done with that, try a stronger drug. Come on. This is dangerous. Anyway, we should all have good news. We should all have wonderful marriages and wonderful children.